Trump Justice Department has 1 week from tonight to comply with a law passed by Congress compelling it to release all the files that it has related to the late sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. But ahead of that deadline for the administration, Congress is providing new insight this evening into just how expansive his orbit of rich and powerful friends actually was. None of the men that you're about to see are accused of wrongdoing. That's important to note. But Democrats on the House Oversight Committee have released these pictures from Jeffrey Epstein's estate, citing the need for transparency. One of the images that we got today shows the president, of course, before he was president, in a crowd with Jeffrey Epstein. Another shows him with several women whose faces have been blurred, the committee says, to protect their identities. And that's the case in several of the pictures that we're actually seeing tonight. There's another image with Trump with another woman, and in these images that are turned over by the Epstein's estate. And there's one also showing Bill Clinton posing with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell at an event. There are several showing Jeffrey Epstein with Steve Bannon, Trump's former chief strategist from his first term in office. The famous names and faces continue as we looked through these photos that were released this morning. Woody Allen, Bill Gates, Richard Branson, Larry Summers all show up. There are tens of thousands more, though, that we are told that have not been released yet by the committee. Democrats released several throughout the day. Mostly they show rooms and images around Jeffrey Epstein's now infamous private island. And in the Oval Office tonight, the president himself was asked what he thought about these new photos.
Well, I haven't seen it, but I mean, everybody knew this man. He was all over Palm Beach. He has photos with everybody. I mean, almost... there are hundreds and hundreds of people that have photos with him, so that's no big deal. I know nothing about it.
The president moved on to other questions, but there were also pictures today that were part of this release of novelty condoms, including one that is clearly visible with the president's face on it. You can read for yourself what it says. In these images, total, we got 92 pictures from the Democrats out of some 95,000 we know that they obtained from Jeffrey Epstein's email account and one of his laptops. The White House has responded tonight by accusing congressional Democrats of cherry-picking photos to create what they claim is a false narrative. I'm going to ask a top Democrat about that in a moment. But in the meantime, one of the loudest Republican voices on this issued a warning today, saying that the secret grand jury material that judges have recently cleared for release, they believe is not going to be enough.
You know, the grand jury material is just a small fraction of what the DOJ needs to release, because the FBI and DOJ probably has evidence that they chose not to take to the grand jury, because the evidence they're in possession of would implicate other people, not Epstein or Maxwell. What we want to see are the facts and evidence that the FBI and the DOJ have never given to a grand jury.
Starting us off tonight, my lead source is the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, Congressman Robert Garcia. And thank you so much for being here, because when you see these pictures, when you go through them, what do you think the significance is of these images?
Well, I think first it's very important that when we receive anything, whether it's from the Epstein estate or other sources, we've got to put it out to the public. This is an investigation that deserves transparency, and the survivors deserve justice. It's been months and months since we've had a subpoena on these documents. We have, of course, this new law that was bipartisan that got passed, and yet the president has not acted on the full release of the files. He could do so tonight and today. These pictures, of course, just continue to raise additional questions. Some of them are quite, I think, disturbing about the relationships that Jeffrey Epstein had with powerful men. You'll note that we have said from day one that we don't care who are in these files, what political party they're in, how much wealth they have, who their connections are. We're going to release the information. We're going to hold those that caused harm, that in some cases abused and raped women and children. We're going to hold them accountable. We're going to get justice for the survivors. And everything that we release just adds and adds more information about who Jeffrey Epstein was, the people that he surrounded him with, and clearly he had connections to very powerful people. I want to say one last thing. We also have numerous bank records, and those bank records we're going through right now will hopefully also get us a lot more information about the connections between who was paying Jeffrey Epstein and for what.
Have you learned anything from those bank records yet, or is it you're still sorting through that?
They're pretty complex records. We're actually working with both the Senate Finance Committee and also the House Financial Services Committee right now to go through all the documents. And we have right now bank records from two different banks, Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan. We need 20 additional banks to be subpoenaed. And we've asked Republicans, Chairman Comer, to please work with us on a bipartisan subpoena to those banks. So we have yet to hear from him on that. We're glad that two other banks are moving forward, but we know that we need information from all of those banks to get the clear financial picture of who was paying Jeffrey Epstein, what individuals, possibly foreign governments, what large organizations, and was there money laundering or other financial crimes happening throughout this whole process.
One thing that the Republicans on your committee have accused you of, and the White House as well, is cherry picking certain pictures, they say to form a narrative here. How did you decide which pictures in the 95,000 that you now have access to, how did you decide which ones to release today?
I think it's interesting that Republicans like to make these arguments when they have yet to call on President Trump in a strong way to release all the files. They wanted to conceal the files. They wanted to oppose our subpoena. They tried everything they could to stop our vote in the Congress to actually get the files released. And so every step of the way, Mike Johnson, the chairman of our committee, James Comer, and Donald Trump have actually been a part of this massive cover-up. So we should be very clear about that. As far as the photos, we've actually only reviewed about a fourth of the 95,000 photos that were actually sent to us late last night. And so as we're going through those photos, we're putting more photos out to the public. We put out some this morning, some later tonight. We'll continue to put out photos in the days and weeks ahead. Our goal is to get everything that we can release out to the public. And some of what was sent to us in this documentation is also quite disturbing. And so we have to be very thoughtful and careful about how we protect the survivors and how we protect the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. That, to us, is the most important thing.
When you say it's disturbing, can you explain why?
What I can say is Jeffrey Epstein was clearly a sick person, a horrible sex trafficker, and so was Ghislaine Maxwell. Like I said earlier, the photos are disturbing. There are clearly many photos of women. And those pictures, we have to ensure that we are protecting those survivors. And our hope is to be able to get the information about what is included in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photos that have been released by the Epstein estate, some very disturbing, of women and their conditions, which we hope to be able to share in the days and weeks ahead.
Well, I mean, wow. I mean, it sounds like you're saying there's potentially images of women being assaulted or in sexual acts.
I think what I would say is that there are very disturbing photos, and there are many of those photos we have of not just of the island, which you showed earlier, but also of women. And I think it's something that is concerning to us because at the end of the day, we're going to protect the identities of the survivors, and we're working with the survivors very closely to ensure that we don't reveal information that could be damaging to any of them. And so it's incredibly important that we center the survivors and that we do not release information or materials that puts any of them in any harm's way. It's also important for public transparency that we do everything we can to push out the information to the public. And so we're doing that right now. And what should happen, and Thomas Massie is right, if we really want to get justice here, the DOJ has to release what they have, because what they have is enormously larger than what we have right now through the Epstein estate or any other sources.
Well, I wonder about that because when y'all released the emails last time that showed correspondence with people like or about Donald Trump, with Ghislaine Maxwell, with Larry Summers, the Deputy Attorney General came out and basically said they didn't have that in their possession. It wasn't really clear why the Justice Department wouldn't have these emails if no one thought to subpoena them until your committee did. But do you actually think the committee has these images from the Justice Department has these emails from his estate?
So that's actually something that we're not exactly sure. I mean, first, let's be clear. I don't trust Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General. This is a person that was Donald Trump's former personal lawyer. The way he's treated Ghislaine Maxwell, involved in possibly moving her to a less secure prison, essentially where she can roam around and have pets and have secret meetings. I mean, that is ridiculous and outrageous. She's a sex trafficker. And so Todd Blanche needs to be investigated himself for these actions. Separate of that, whether or not the Department of Justice has the documents the Epstein estate has. He has said that they don't have many of these documents. That may be true. I don't trust everything that Todd Blanche says, but I imagine that the DOJ has some of the documents, but they may not have everything. And so we're not gathering information or waiting for the DOJ to send us documents. We're talking to the Epstein estate. We're talking to the Virgin Islands. We're talking to survivors directly and getting testimony. We're bringing in people into our committee and getting information and depositions. And one last piece. There are hundreds and hundreds of FBI agents who love their country and are patriots and that have helped to put together the Epstein files. So Pam Bondi and Donald Trump need to understand that if they try to hide, redact, or in any way tamper with evidence, there are good Americans out there that are ready to call that out.
We'll see. They have 1 week left to produce those. Congressman Robert Garcia, the ranking member on House Oversight, thank you for joining us tonight.